What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Third and Longhorn. And before we get started today, don't forget, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. We appreciate it. It helps us. Drop a comment in here in the bottom down here, even if it's just a hook 'em, whatever it is. But all that aside, we have royalty in the house today.
Yes.
And I'm going to read through the long title. She is the Executive Senior Associate Athletics Director, Chief of Staff. She's also a SWA Hall of Honor inductee in 2011 and Texas Sports Hall of Fame in 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Plonsky.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate you coming in.
This is a supreme honor. I love this show. I love you guys, and trust me, I'm a fan. So thank you for having me.
Well,
You're
a
legend.
We are honored. Well, we always start off the same way, and it's how did you get to Texas? I know you've got a great story, and your career started at Texas in 1981. Is that correct?
That is true. It was the fall of '81. I was freezing up at Ames, Iowa, serving in a similar role as a publicist for women's sports at Iowa State. That was my first job out of college. I graduated from Kent State in '79 and got very fortunate and served as a sort of a one-woman shop for a really nice sports program at Iowa State. And that was kind of fun, you know. It was in the old Big Eight. Got to watch Darnell Valentine and Rolando Blackman play a little basketball from KU, K-State, and Nebraska and Oklahoma had the bar in football. But my bar was women's sports. And 2 years after I got there, there was this old Quip fax machine. And for all of you who don't have socks older than everybody in the room the way I do, a Quip fax machine, not like the Xerox ones, took 7 minutes a page to get anything to you.
Wow.
Think about doing swim results and sending that 7 minutes a page. Long story short, I got this Quip fax, and it said, Women's Sports Information Director, University of Texas. Jobs open, and it said salary $20,000. I was making all of $14,000 at the time. I thought,
Big baller.
I'm going to apply for that. I could be rich the rest of my life. Retire at 27, right? Anyway, I applied and interviewed, and Donna Lopiano, who was the women's AD at the time, the boss, and Coach Conrad was the second boss because she had served two roles. She was women's basketball coach and associate athletic director, and they thought I was too young, and I was not even 23 yet. So I go back home, and I'm okay, you know, I'm in Ames, Iowa, and I'm like my friends and my job, and 2 weeks later, they call me back and say, well, the person we offered the job to doesn't want to move in the middle of the year, and we need someone this fall. Basketball's getting ready to start. And I knew the person they had wanted to hire, a good friend of mine. And I called her up and said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm 5 years older than you. I'm set in my ways. I'll come in May, but I'm not uprooting in the middle of our basketball season. And I said I'd walk backwards on glass on I-35 to move to Austin, Texas, and they hired me. And that is the truth. Wow. It was a twist of fate.
That's amazing.
That is such a great story. So, but before you became an icon, a trailblazer in women's sports here at Texas, you were a baller yourself. Yeah.
Well, that's a stretch. But,
yeah, you played basketball at Kent State.
First women's basketball.
Yeah, I love the sport, and those of us who are my age, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it, I turned 67 in January, but
Turn up.
I was a kid when Title IX passed. This was summer of '72, and I was about to go into my sophomore year in high school in Northeast Ohio. And there were about 8 of us in our high school that were pretty serious about sports, because we had watched Billie Jean King, in tennis, and you got exposed a little bit. But bottom line, we loved basketball. And I remember talking with my friends going, do you think someday there might be scholarships in women's sports? Nah, never.
Not a chance.
But I had a really good neighbor. His name was Paul Brownlee, and he was 6'4". He was a prolific basketball and baseball player. Ended up going to a really good college and was an All-American. And he taught me a lot about the game, how to play it, how to practice it. And when I went through high school and then went to college at Kent, it was a walk-on era. So you walked on and you got to play. And I enjoyed being on a team, and I did that for 3 years at Kent, but I was really trying to finish my journalism degree. So not only was I sitting the bench a lot because I was the slowest, most cerebral guard in the MAC, as I tell people, but I really wanted to finish my degree and get out and start working. And it was just a twist of fate that I'd worked my way through school, not only working for the student paper, the Daily Kent Stater. It was a lot like the Daily Texan, a really good student paper, but working in the sports info office. So I had exposure and had experience, and that's why I got lucky and got to go to Iowa State. But even then, we played basketball in Old State Gym up there for a little while.
Can you also add on graduating magna cum laude as well? Because you kind of not tooting your own horn, speaking about the things that you've been a part of. This is the show we want to celebrate you because of you blazing the trail for so many young athletes that have come after you. And not just at Kent State, not just at Iowa State, but the relationships that you fostered at the University of Texas and that I've been a part of you with. I want you to smell your roses, have your roses right now, and get a chance to share the things that you did in order to create the foundation for you to be where you're at now.
Well, foundations are funny things. You rarely get to create them yourself until you've seen good ones. And I promise you, mine started at home. I'm one of 5 girls. If you ask me how I got into sports, it's a pretty good stretch there too. But, my dad grew up in the late 40s and early 50s in terms of college age, and he was one of 10 children. My grandfather, his dad, had come over on the boat from Warsaw, Poland. My last name's Polish. My mother's Sicilian. But my dad was really born in poverty. My granddad was a coal miner, spoke very little English, and my dad had 5 older sisters, then dad, and then more after him. For him to break out of Western Pennsylvania in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and go to high school and get a college scholarship, and get this, the high school coach was a guy named Earl Ewing, who happened to know Bear Bryant, who was then at Kentucky, I believe. And Earl had 4 really good athletes, including my dad. He was a 5'8" running back. And Earl called Bear and said, I've got these guys on this team in Western PA. They're pretty tough guys. It's big football country there. He said, I don't have any scholarships, he said, but I promise you, there's a guy at what was Northeast Louisiana, it's now Louisiana Monroe, that was looking for players. And his name was Jim Malone. And like we have DKR, Texas Memorial Stadium, at Louisiana Monroe, it's Malone Stadium. And Jim Malone was a Native American. And my dad and his 3 teammates, 3 Italian guys and my dad, they thumbed down, honestly, he told me, thumbed down to Monroe, Louisiana, went to school. He got a business degree, was in ROTC, played football, came back, made the best decision of his life to marry my mother. And he was a systems analyst with that business degree at General Tire and Rubber Company long before I knew what a computer was. So the foundation of go to work, get a good education, get your college degree, no matter what obstacles you might have to get it. Like one of 5 kids, they told us, like, line up, you're all going to college, and by the way, y'all are paying for it. So my sisters and I, 3 went to Akron, I went to Kent, my youngest sister went to Kent, but that's what we did, and good grades and all that were emphasized throughout my life. So I think about that when I worked in a college environment right away, Kent, Iowa State, Texas, etc. The foundation of all of this, and y'all can speak to it, is education changes the arc of your life, regardless of what level it is. And I am a proponent, passionate proponent, as I know CDC is, for what we provide on campuses like the University of Texas and others for young people to live their dreams, to really apply themselves, find themselves, and to be able to graduate and live and work for 50, 60 years and be successful. I mean, that's what American dreams are about.
Not only does it transform your life, 'cause I totally agree with you, it transforms for the generations after you for years to come. Yeah. I mean, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. Now there are others in my family that look at that as an example, and happened to you too, of course, with your father. Did your passion for sports? Because you seem, I mean, you're highly intelligent. You could have gone in different directions. I want to ask you at one point, if you didn't pursue sports and being a trailblazer for women's sports, what would you have pursued? But your passion for sports, did that come from your father?
It really did. We lived in a town called Greensburg, which was about 20 minutes from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And if you follow golf, that's where Arnold Palmer grew up, played. And my dad was a really good golfer and used to go to Greensburg Country Club, but he would play in Latrobe. And I would hear stories about Arnie. And then I had allergies really bad as a youngster. And so my dad used to have to drive me into Pittsburgh to get allergy shots, which is about 30 minutes away. But he would always find a way to get my appointment and out. And we'd dump into Forbes Field to see the Pittsburgh Pirates play around about the fourth inning when we could walk in free. So, I grew up learning about Bill Mazeroski and Gene Alley and Willie Stargell and Roberto Clemente and Bob Bailey. I could memorize that Pirates team. And when we moved to Northeast Ohio in '66, my dad and I used to lay on our living room floor and listen to KDKA radio because you could barely get that 50,000 watt signal to listen to Pirate games. So yeah, it was my dad. And living in that environment, Western PA, Northeast Ohio, we moved to Akron, Ohio, and I'm looking at Ohio State and all these other schools, Cleveland Browns. So it's been in my blood. But along with reading, writing, like I said, good grades. I mean, as much as I love to be outdoors and go to practice and softball and basketball, volleyball, if our grades weren't good and our chores weren't done, you were in the house and grounded. And trust me, as the eldest, sometimes you don't get away with everything. And I had my share of getting grounded for not completing some things, but it was rarely for bad grades because I like to get good grades too. So
That's good.
I want to talk about your storyline as well, right? You talked about leaving Iowa State, getting your job offer at the University of Texas. Your friend turns it down. Perfect opportunity for you. You're there for how many years before you end up going? Was it Big East right after?
It
as
was.
Big East commissioner. So
Yeah.
talk about that timeline of getting to Texas, what that looked like for you, and then the path that you took afterwards before you returned back to Texas.
I've been thinking about that period of time a lot because we lost Kenneth Sims and, think about fall of '81. And even though I was going to be on the women's side, trust me, I chased down Jones Ramsey and Bill Little very quickly. Doug Smith, Lynn Nemick, Steve Ross was working in our department. It was just a wonderful group of people. And DeLoss had just become the men's AD in August of '81. So in Belmont Hall, the women were on the 6th floor, the guys were on the 2nd. And I remember walking in the football press box on the 8th floor of Belmont and looking out on that field and just going, oh my gosh, this is where Earl played and this is where Darryl coached. And Bill was so swell. I went to him and said, hey, Bill, I'm the women's publicist and there's not going to be many reporters chasing, stories. And we've got 8 women's sports that are really good, about 90 athletes. I said, do you mind if I work your football games, your men's basketball games, so I can kind of slide over and talk to the writers and just maybe pitch a story to her? He goes, heck yes, and by the way, we need somebody to type football play-by-play during the games in the stats booth.
So he puts it to work. Bill found a spot for you quick.
This show right here, Third and Longhorn, we were doing Third and Longhorn in the stats booth. When we were at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, I told Todd Dodge, I said, do you know how often I typed your name, when you played? I mean, that was my life, but we had a blast. I learned so much. I owe Bill Little and Jones, again, a lot for my development at Texas for how you had to be around writers and the media, because there were a lot of them. You remember the old SWC press tour?
Yep.
I mean, that was a horde, going from school to school to school to cover football preseason. And they used to take caravans and buses. I mean, it was an amazing experience for me. And think about how good that league was in all sports and who we got to watch perform. Yeah. So, that was a transformation moving forward. And ironically, on the women's side, when I got there, we were still in the AIAW, which was the predecessor to the NCAA for formal competition for women's sports. Very few people recognize the AIAW era, but it survived for 10 years, from 72 to 82. And Donna was the president in the last year that it existed, because the NCAA had announced in 81, in January at their convention, we're going to start doing women's championships. And Donna was in a political crack because she's serving as the volunteer president of this organization. And she told Mick Haley, our volleyball coach, and Jody Conrad, our basketball coach, and we were staying behind in the IAW. After they threw a fit and probably threw rocks at her office, they actually calmed down and said, we understand. And, it was a weird year because there were 2 championships in every sport. Yeah. And we dominated. Mick had won volleyball right before I got there in the fall of 81. Jody was second in basketball. We lost to a really great Rutgers team at the Palestra. We won outdoor track under Phil Delavan. And I remember Donna at one meeting when she finally explained to all of us little ones on staff, like, this is why we stayed back. She said, the recruiting rules are going to change. For example, AIAW, kids have to pay their way to visit campuses. You have to pick your school and say, I'm going to drive my parents. They're going to pitch me a visit, but they don't pay for anything. NCAA is like, come for a visit. You get 5 of them. And we didn't have the budget. The women's budget at that time was being sourced from discretionary funds from the president's office. Gotcha. So Donna, when she talked to Mick and Jody, she goes, for example, Jody, if your recruiting budget is $4,000 this year, it's going to be $24,000 next. And Mick for you, and you for swimming. So Donna was holding out so she could have budget conversations with the president to say, here's what we need if we're going to be good in the NCAA. Gotcha. But what I really think she was doing is behind her desk, she was loading a powder keg, because when we went to the NCAA and official Southwest Conference competition in the fall of 82, I can't even tell you how ready we were. Just walk in our beautiful Hall of Fame, and you see a lot of crystal, and you see a lot of trophies. Just go back and stare at some of those ones in the 80s, because not only were our men winning everything, our women were prolific. And, she hires Richard Quick in swimming, and we 84, 85, 86, 87, 88. I mean, by the time 1986 rolled around, Jody goes 34-0. We had won outdoor track, won swimming again. I was 28 years old, and honestly, that summer I thought I was ready to have heart failure because I was just tired. I couldn't keep up with my job. I had all student assistants, and they were terrific. I would just throw them sports. You get swimming, guess what? You're going to come home with a ring. Track too. Golf, PGA players, same with tennis. But I was sitting in my office, and it was in June, and it was 9:30 at night, and I pick up this ugly yellow rotary phone. It had rung, and it was Dick Weiss from the Philadelphia Daily News, who we know as Hoops. If any of you follow great writers, and he covers a lot of sports, but he goes, "What are you doing in the office?" And I said, "Hoops." And I described, like, when I got to do a media guide. I just got done with this season. And he said, okay. He goes, "You had worked a volunteer event at the United States Sports Festival in the summer of 83. And all these guys you met there as a press officer said you came in and helped in basketball. And they believe you can be a publicist for the Big East Conference." And I was like, Big East? I said, remind me. And they're like, Georgetown, Villanova.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that Big East. Where's that office? Well, it's in Providence, Rhode Island. Now I'm sitting in Austin, Texas. And I'm going, snow. No. Seen Kent, seen Ames. But I'm thinking basketball. And remember, cable was a thing by 1986. 79 was when it really, ESPN launched. But watching cable sports, if I worked really late or got home from a trip, I would watch a replay of Providence Pitt basketball at 4 a.m. on ESPN on my TV in Austin. So I applied for this job, and the commissioner is Dave Gavitt, and he's a lot of people forget this, but Dave was our Olympic coach. He was the Providence College head coach, had Ernie DiGregorio, Marvin Barnes, a great team in 1973 that probably should have won the NCAA championship. Marvin got hurt in the semi against Memphis, and Bill Walton had that famous 21 for 22 game in the final, and that was Dave's hope. But he had also been our Olympic coach in 80 when we boycotted. So Dave Gavitt's star would have been like Bobby Knight's or John Thompson's had he been able to fulfill his basketball. But he was a commissioner of the Big East. And here's this guy who, he's a history major at Dartmouth. That's Dave's background. Coach. And he decides he's going to form this Northeast Conference with select schools in big markets. Some of their gyms were no bigger than this room. Seton Hall, St. John's, but television. ESPN needed programming.
Yep.
And they were saying, we'll produce the games and we'll give them to you. That's how the Big East was birthed.
Wow.
And who would have known that, after a while, guys like Patrick Ewing would say, I'm going to go to Georgetown. And guys like Eddie Pinckney, who grew up in the Bronx, would say, I'm going to Villanova. So by 85, this league was power-packed, trying to emulate what the ACC had been. And that's why I fell in love with the thought of going there. But I interview with Dave, and I kind of walk in the office, and I'm nervous as heck, and I stick out my hand. I say, Coach Gavitt, it's such an honor to meet you. And he goes, Coach Gavitt, you belie your age. I said, well, I said, Ernie DiGregorio, when I watched him throw a 3/4 court length behind the pass to Kevin Stakem on the run, I said, I went down to my basement and practiced that pass until my mother said, if you hit my wall one more time with that basketball, I'm going to ground you. And he and I talked basketball for a half an hour because he had watched Jody's team beat Cheryl Miller in USC. And he goes, you press 94-50, see Vic Schaefer last night against TCU. He said, that's the way we play. He goes, the ACC plays defense like this. Like, they're tough, but he goes, we're up here, all up in you. And I went home and I thought, I'm not getting this job, but because there's probably 175 men. And he called me and he offered me the job. I was sitting in my sister's home in Ohio. He calls and he says, I'm about to complicate your life. And I fell backwards. I told my mom, I said, I'm going to go to Providence. And I remember we went to the drugstore, and at the stoplight, the radio was on, and that's the day that Len Bias died. He had been the number one draft pick of the ball. I'll never forget where I was. Eerie things happen in your life where you remember where you were.
Right.
I had just gotten this news. I'm going to New England. I'm already a Celtics fan.
Yeah.
And I hear that. And so anyway, that's how I got to the Big East.
Wow.
That is truly amazing.
Well, I think it's, look, you have just the most impressive career resume. You really do. But not only that, I think what I want to get from you is you've had not only a front row seat, but also been in the driver's seat for a lot of what has happened at the University of Texas. Obviously, it's come a long way since you first got there. This is probably like picking a favorite kid, but what are your favorite moments that stick out the most from your time at Texas?
Well, certainly DeLoss Dodds calling me at the Big East office and saying, would you ever want to work on a campus again? I said, your campus? Yes. And again, the conference realignment thing was happening then, and I really just felt this tug that I love working with coaches and kids and bosses like DeLoss. He gave me an opportunity at a time in 1993 to come back when the world was shifting. So I remember conference realignment and DeLoss saying very clearly, we're probably going to be in a new conference soon. Don't know when, but we need to be responsive. DeLoss was very responsible for the first iteration of the Big 12. What a brilliant see-around corners guy. And I always credit him, too, because DeLoss always made great decisions like a coach would. He was a coach and an athletic director during his career, but good decisions come from people that always think about student athletes and coaches first. So the moment of the Big 12, which at that time for us was so critical because it allowed DeLoss to go hire Mac, Rick, Barnes, Augie Garrido in a succession of time where while we were starting to, and this was another DeLoss vision, to create a commercialized environment. And I must tell you, Red McCombs gave us a little subway push in the back, as we call it. He just said, DeLoss, this is the world. Look up the road. He goes, the Cowboys are doing their training camp at St. Ed's. What do you think you're seeing there? And we had to get in it to compete for this other pie of money. Because we're self-sustaining. A lot of people don't realize that. While the women's department for a while was funded, by 2001, they had kind of told Jody and DeLoss as the athletic directors, our charity is over. Like, you guys have to combine your budget and start earning your own way. You think about Del Conte now, his budget is over $300 million, and it's all self-sustaining. We can't take money from our academic budget. So the moments of excitement are watching conference realignment spin around the axis of the University of Texas and its leadership and its president. The coaches that just brought so much to our table. They recruited guys like you and many others in all the sports and women as well. The Big 12 just rose us with a tide that allowed us to position ourselves appropriately to, again, DeLoss. We need a channel. Longhorn Network, ESPN comes to our table and delivers a channel for us. Had a lifeline, but Del Conte and Jay Hartzell had new vision, more conference realignment. And I must tell you, because of the politics of our state and our university and the academic reputation we have, I really didn't know whether administratively we'd ever get the support to go to the SEC. And that's no knock on the league academically, because there are strong schools there. But if you think about the AAU type of institutions that were in the Big 12, A&M, Missouri, Kansas, Iowa State, the top 68 tiers of schools. Yep. That's who Texas likes to hang with academically. But again, Del Conte, very convincing. The moment he told us quietly, might be something in our future, might not happen fast. And I'm sitting in front of his desk and I see his eyes go, this is July of 21, and he goes, go call Sean and everybody else and tell them to get down here, because the scroll went, Texas and OU join the SEC. I was like, oh, it's out. And there's SEC Media Day, right? The football media day. So you think about moments like that. And again, that's the business side. But the ethereal side, I think I've told people this before. Watching, again, a Big 12 moment. Ricky Williams, we win a game at Nebraska. I think they've won 49 straight. And it's an ABC game. It's cold. We win. Our team goes to the locker room, but Mac's still in the field for a post game. And, we don't like Nebraska and they don't like us. But honestly, there was this huge gaggle of fans over our football tunnel. And they stayed in this freezing weather to applaud Ricky as he ran off the field, because he put on a performance that was probably Earl-like to them. I'll never forget that, because it taught me something about rivals, and excellence is appreciated by really good fans. And I never forgot that moment. Watching teams win championships, certainly Coach Conrad's 34-0 season was epic. What a group of young ladies, all classy. Set sort of a standard of how women's basketball could draw. They sold out a Final Four for the first time ever the next year. We didn't win it, but staged the first sold-out Final Four in the Irwin Center. I was already at the Big East, and I remember Brett Musburger going, did they really sell out the women's Final Four in Austin? I went, yeah, buddy. That's what we do. Yeah. But again, those kind of moments. And then, again, to tell you the truth, the best ones are commencement, where you watch the freshman, you went, no way he or she is making it here, because they can't, walk and chew gum, or they're always, not losing their ID, kind of losing their beans, really. And then all of a sudden they get centered because of good coaches and good support, and you watch them walk across the stage. Their parents are crying. You get the stole. It's amazing. Those are the things that keep you coming back to work every day at Texas.
You've mentioned a lot of changes that you have witnessed, being a trailblazer, being an icon in women's sports. I don't know right now if we've ever experienced this much change in college athletics. The landscape, right? NIL, transfer portal, revenue sharing is on the horizon as well. Do you believe that these things are producing an optimistic climate for women's sports? Do you think some of these things could be a negative for women's sports? What are your thoughts?
Everything comes down to money. It's the changes in college sports, frankly, should have been done a long time ago. But our governance system of the NCAA was one big room and everybody had a vote. littles, middle, bigs. And the littles, and I don't blame them because I went to school at what would have been considered a mid-major. They were scared of what the bigs might do because of resources. But if everybody would have played nice in the sandbox, they should have just let us, meaning the top 5 conferences, okay, go do your thing. Just don't forget about us. Keep us in the Big Ten. Think about this, March Madness. It is so great when McNeese upsets somebody.
Cinderella.
And you still got to have those stories to make things compelling. But the publicity rights, NIL, we should have done that. We should have done NIL 15 years ago, just like when we decided we're going to feed the kids 10 years ago. Well, everybody was like, we promise you they're not going to get fat. Athletes don't overeat. Just let us fuel them.
Right.
Finally, they listened. But again, as a publicist, we actually tried to ooch an NCAA group forward in late 2008-9 to start thinking about our corporate sponsors of NCAA championships. Like, let them thank Chevrolet and let them thank State Farm for their support of our championship. Like Divisions 1, 2, and 3 get to have a competition because of these NCAA corporate partners, but no one could jump the synapse, especially faculty members who were on these NCAA committees. They just couldn't get past the ideas of a kid shilling a product. Like, are they really going to say drink Coke and then drink one? I mean, they just, honestly, it was that rudimentary. So we paid a price now. But this settlement on April 7th, we project Judge Wilkins will bless this settlement, and it will result in 2 things, actually 3. Back damages, huge for the group that didn't get to do NIL. The group enrolled from 2016 to 21. And honestly, Charlie Baker, the new head of the NCAA, deserves a nod because had he not stepped up to say, we, the national office from our coffers, will take care of that $280 million per year for 10 years, back damages. Had he not done that, y'all, that would have been on us. That's just for the back. So now we move forward and they say 22.5% of all these revenue categories, tickets, sponsorships, TV licensing, you all are going to start sharing this with the people who helped you earn it. And we know this, and I've known this. I've loved women's sports my whole life, loved Olympic men's sports. But again, football, basketball, they net revenue. The rest of our sports, unfortunately, do not. They all make some money, but it's not net because of expenses, travel, coaches' salaries. So this publicity rights revenue sharing, it's a lot of money, and it's not new money. All we're doing is taking 22.5% of our budget. If I divide this page by 5, that disappears from our budget, and now our fundraising and everything else, sponsorships, licensing, have to get in gear. But it's what the world commands. I think the Constitution says we should allow name, image, and likeness use for every individual. They're allowed to go out and stake their claim. This is America. The thing that I'm worried about a little bit is sustainability. How many schools can just do this, what I just described? So if to do this, a school says, well, I had 20 sports, I'm going to go down to 15 or 12. That I read that as lost opportunities for young men and women who we described. You get a chance to access higher ed and play sport. So women's sports has never been at a better moment. Olympic sports for men and women have never been at a better moment. Football is driving a huge responsibility and train for most of Division I college athletics. Men's basketball is next. Everybody has to figure out a way to sustain it and to hopefully keep the framework of higher ed and sports together, because we're the only country in the world that gives a 17 to 23-year-old that kind of opportunity. And if that goes away, there's no replacement for that pipeline. And the people who are really petrified if it changes rapidly are those people in Colorado Springs at the USOPC, because swimmers, divers, I mean, 84% of our medalists in Paris were former or current college student athletes.
84%.
Wow.
That's incredible.
I
I do
think
want
about that kind of macro impact.
Yeah, big time. I want to talk about the sustainability, not necessarily from the financial aspect, because you went in great detail talking about how some of the things may look for the future, but more so in alignment with realignment, right? You've been a part of seeing what it took to go from the AIW to the NCAA. Texas had success in the AIW and then had success in the NCAA. Same way, Big 12 come in from the football perspective. You win the Big 12 championship first year that you're in it, last year that you're in it, and then going into the SEC, get an opportunity. Women's soccer, they win the first SEC championship. Men's swimming and diving just won a national championship. The women, Vic Schaefer, they're playing in the Final Four, right? What has been a constant that at the University of Texas, this is the staple that creates sustainability for a winning product, no matter what conference or no matter what division you're playing in?
Well, you guys know how leadership works and alignment. Replacing DeLoss Dodds when DeLoss decided it was his time to go retire and be with Marianne and his family, that would have been like replacing John Wooden. Who would you have wished that job on? And it took some iterations before that happened. But I remember when Greg Fenves called me about December, it was December of 17. I was with Jarrett's team at Stanford for a volleyball regional. I was walking because we were about to play Stanford in a regional final. And he said, hey, I'm about to accelerate. We had a great interim AD and Mike Perrin, who had replaced Steve Patterson. And he said, I'm going to hire Chris Del Conte from TCU. And I kind of jogged behind a coffee shop on that main thoroughfare at Stanford. And I said, President Fenves, you have just hired the perfect person for us, the right age, the right energy. And he said, well, there's one more thing. You've been women's AD and you've been doing this external thing. He goes, you're going to report to Chris now, because I'm a one dotted line guy. And I said, it's all that's left. We had already merged everything between men and women's athletics. So the leadership of Chris Del Conte, all you got to do is date yourself back to 17 when he came. Yeah. He went to work, and as glib as he is and energetic, and he's got a personality like no one has ever seen. He's just unbelievable communicator. He is as wizardry with numbers and budget as DeLoss was, because DeLoss, I'm the word girl. Like, anybody wants to get their story edited, they bring me. Get out the red pen, CP.
Careful, we'll hire you.
Yeah.
Right. Publicist, the marketing mind.
But numbers, those guys can do things in their heads that are just crazy. And then he hires Sean Eichhorst, the former AD at Nebraska and Miami, to come down. And Sean's a lawyer, brings so much to our table. Drew Martin, who came down and took over external. Drew is brilliant. He's a magic man. And then we bring in Sarah Baumgartner to be our sports administrator. Yep. So when you look at how he puts talent around, and then he hires great coaches, gives them the resources, demands a lot of them, but says, I'm going to give you everything you need to win. All I ask of you is that you, continue to help us make this department, this athletics department, an asset to our great university brand. Don't cheat. Give the kids a good experience. You can get there in a hurry. And I marveled at his, we got in a plane to hire the first two coaches. He goes, I need you to help me with these first two, Flo in track and Mike White in softball. And I just marveled at his connections, the way he interviewed, what he was looking for, his responsiveness. I mean, you've been around great people, and you just watch this guy operate, and you're like, this is the new generation of leader in this space, who can pivot when you need to, and he's had to. He has no fear. He's a can-do guy. I think everybody has trust in him, but if you really strip away the persona, the natty ties and the kerchief and his great humor, he is one of the most compassionate, spiritual guys I've ever been around. And that to me is the makeup of today's great leaders. You've got to have it all. You've got to have the external, but you have to have this internal core that is so consistent and right, because what you do matters. And Del Conte does the right thing and makes right decisions for the greater good all the time. And it's an honor to work with him, for him, and to help carry on his vision. He is the best of the best.
That's incredible.
He's hired some great coaches. We've had the privilege of having some of those coaches here on our platform. And behind the scenes, they tell these stories about how competitive the coaches are amongst each other. And at these retreats, sometimes things get really competitive. You know these coaches very well. Who are the most competitive coaches on the 40 acres?
Well, you can't be on staff if you're not competitive.
That's a prerequisite.
And this is the timing of this show is great because honestly, we just came from a coaches meeting, and we kind of look around, and the only one that wasn't there was Bob Bowman, who had just again won a championship, first swimming coach on the men's side ever to win back-to-back at 2 different schools. He had I think a national or international swimming meeting, but Vic kind of slipped in late, and we were all intensely looking at this scholarship chart because, as you know, part of the settlement is more scholarships, roster management, but full scholarships in a quick period, and we're going to raise the money to do it. So all of a sudden, Chris looks over and sees Vic, and everybody does the applause. We go around the room. But it is like a scorecard. Like, hey, who do you have this weekend? Like, hey, Schloss is like, hey, I might have lost my left fielder, but I need to go up and sweep. I need to beat Georgia. And Mike White's like, well, I got to go to Mizzou. See it. I mean, it's just this room of juice. Vic described our 2 freshmen to help us beat Tennessee the other night as juice. He goes, they are juice. That room, y'all, with the leadership, and now Jim Davis, our interim president, Kevin Altype, our chair of the Board of Regents. Talk about a juice line. I mean, just get your cups, fill it up.
Juice line, that's great. That is fantastic.
The juice line.
Steal that with the juice line.
That's awesome.
Which one do you think gives the best either pregame speech or motivational speech? I think I got an idea of who it is, but which one of the coaches gives the best pregame speech? Pump them up.
I don't listen to a lot of the pregame speeches.
Okay.
I actually am more curious what they say afterwards.
Okay.
Win or lose.
Okay. Oh yeah. Who gives the best post game, speech then?
Yeah. I remember a few of them. Obviously, I will talk about one pregame one. Sark was very new to our staff, but do you remember when he was in the tunnel at the Alamo Bowl?
I do remember this.
And the guy
get your
the guy
hands
kind of
off
said,
me.
"Wait here," and he was, and I went, "Ooh, we like that."
Yes.
This is the
I was the same
ESPN
way.
tunnel run out.
Yes. Don't
ready to
touch
go.
me. Do not touch me.
I'm in the zone. I'm in the zone.
In less words.
Yeah.
More words, maybe.
And again, you contrast that with after his most exhilarating moment, Mac telling a group of guys after we won a title in 2005, like, don't let this be the best moment of your life. Love that
That
one.
was a classic, legendary.
But they're all really good and really funny. I mean, I remember sitting with Jarrett after a loss, and he said, it's moments like this. It was a regional final, and one from the Final Four, and he was like, he goes, gosh, these moments just devastate you. And we were like, next year he was right back, and. It was that loss that drove the next title the next year. And I go, do you remember sitting in the Kentucky training room last year and you were ready to jump off a bridge? Like, how do you feel now? I mean, it's just coaches are the neatest people. They're truly the ones who are doing the Lord's work because they're responsible for other people's children. I mean, every Tuesday morning we have this little cares meeting at 10:30. I gather my compliance staff because this is what I do now. I'm the kid area, as Del Conte said when he got here. He goes, who does the kid stuff? And I'm like, well, Del Conte never wanted to be an AD in the first place. I spend all my time with the people that help our coaches take care of the kids. So compliance, sports med, academics, and again, 67, I'm allowed to do this. I have my little iPad up, and I'm like, how are our babies doing this week? Because that's what I call our 575 kids. Yep. And I don't want to hear about the gold medal winners or the guys that just shot 63. Like, give me the wobbly ones.
Yeah.
Who do we really on this screen, everybody has to have eyes on because something happened. They're injured. Mom got sick. Dad lost their job.
Exactly
flunked a class.
Wow.
Girlfriend or boyfriend dumped him, whatever. And that we call it our cares group. And it's real quick. It's a half an hour, but we take notes. We all stay together, like no triangulation on this kid. If they come and see you, you got to communicate with everybody on this screen. That's the way we take care of our
That's incredible.
Because honestly, we get paid to help our coaches not get more stressed than they are for recruiting, training, competition. And frankly, as an administrator, I feel like I'm paid to keep stuff off the boss's desk.
You've
seen his desk, right? Spotless. I'm like, we all get A's today.
Right. That's all CP right there.
Right.
Wow. CP and at L.
I love that you call them babies though, because they're all somebody's baby.
Oh yeah.
They're all somebody. And my mom still
Absolutely.
loves Max, and she's like, we interviewed Max. She's like, you're gonna say Mac? Tell Mac I said hi. We love Mac because Mac took care of her baby. In her eyes, she's like, that's all that matters to her. Yeah.
Darn right.
Love it.
Well, I know we probably got to wrap up, and but I got to get to one more question before we do. Obviously, I've heard a lot of people saying women's basketball is having a moment right now. I actually don't think it's a moment. I think the thing is at an all-time high and continuing to grow. How amazing has it been for you as a person who played in the 70s all the way to now to watch what this sport has become? Like, what does that mean to you?
It's incredibly fulfilling because the young women who laid the foundation early 70s, late 70s, early 80s, a lot of them are coaching now. That means they were taught and trained by really good coaches. Like Nell Fortner, one of ours, basketball, volleyball, All-American, late 70s, early 80s. Nell announced her retirement. She's a head coach at Georgia Tech, was our Olympic coach in 2000. And I texted Nell, and, she had a great year. Got in the NCAA. They got beat early, but they had a terrific year in the ACC. And I thought a lot about Nell and people of her age. And she's moving on, but has had a great number of years to influence the game. But what I really believe is the WNBA, international basketball, meaning Olympics, are being seeded by this beautiful collegiate system we have, because Caitlin Clark goes from Iowa and goes right to the W and is a star. Angel Reese does her thing at first Maryland, then LSU, goes in, and now they rise up. The group that's going in this year, now you almost look at your phone every morning. It's like, who's going to stay and who's going to go? Like Olivia Miles, who we watch play.
Right.
Yeah.
She's going to hunt for another school another year.
Yep.
She said her thing at Notre Dame. She could go in the draft, but she's saying no. We thought Beckers was not going to go in the draft. Right. She's decided, because I wanted to tell her, girl, Big D is a really nice place to live if they get it. Like, big NIL corporate sponsorship. Yes. She's a heck of a player. Hopefully, maybe we'll see her. But again, I think women's basketball right now is exciting. And it really is the dragger of the other sports. Like, I think volleyball is where it is because it's been helped by women's basketball. And volleyball is trying to do its thing. Yeah. We have, beach volleyball at Texas now, which is great. But I still say, again, LA Olympics 28, you just watch how our colleges and our national sports will get geared up for a great showing in 28 in LA. There is nothing like having an Olympics in our home soil. We forget how inspiring Atlanta was. Yep. Because of Atlanta, David Stern went, we're going to have a women's pro league. Because of Atlanta in 96, he launched the WNBA in 97. Awesome. That's going to continue. It's not just a moment, it's momentum.
Yeah,
I love it.
Well, CP, we really appreciate you coming by. This has been awesome, and I think we're definitely going to have a part 2 because I feel like there's a lot more stories that could be told.
Can you get to have the questions we want to
right.
Well, you guys, thank you for everything. Love you guys, love your spirit, and love the stories that come out of these episodes. And thanks for giving time to the University of Texas.
Thank you.
Legendary.
All right, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.